So with the upcoming Imperial Guard codex, we of course have brand new lore. In a previous video I did, we talked about Commissar Yarrick and his death. One of the greatest heroes of the Imperium is no more. Now in this video, I actually want to talk about Armageddon itself, because apparently in the new Imperial Guard codex, there's a 2-page spread that is called Warzone Armageddon. But in this spread, apparently it's not actually to do with orcs. The bigger threat now is chaos. Now, if you cast your minds back to the first War of Armageddon, that was indeed all about chaos. It was about Angron, the demons, the Grey Knights banishing Angron, etc., etc., etc. The second and the third war, of course, were about the orcs, Gazskull, Black Templars, Blood Angels, Salamanders were there. I think the Marines Malevolent were there. They killed a bunch of civilians and all that kind of stuff. But it seems now, going forward in this lore, that maybe chaos is back on the menu as being the next big threat on Armageddon. So let's jump in, let's go through it all, let's talk about the regiments, the characters, the new Hive that it's all taking part in. So let's do it. Now, for those of you who don't know what Armageddon is, I'm going to quickly summarize what it is, so we're all on the same page. So Armageddon is a very, very important world. It's an Imperial-held world. It actually manufactures to a lot of war zones. If it was to fall, then Terra itself can become more vulnerable to attacks, especially now with the Great Rift and everything that's going on with Chaos. Also, the whole world is basically the Terra for the Orc Empire, the Orcs themselves, because it was previously named Ullanor. Back during the Great Beast, when the Great Beast nearly took over the galaxy, destroyed the Imperium, basically killed a bunch of chapters off, thousands upon thousands of planets fell to this massive green tide. The Imperium managed to fight back, take the planet, kill the beast, etc., etc. And what they did, well, what the Mechanicus did in secret, is transported the entire planet using Orc tech to a different area to do research and all that kind of stuff on it. And they renamed it Armageddon. Everyone thought that Ullanor was destroyed. It was exterminated, blew apart, it's gone. It no longer exists. But in theory, well, not in theory, practical, right? Theoretical, it was moved to a different part of the galaxy, but the Orcs, I think, are still drawn to that planet because it must have some type of wildness around it or something like that. So it's very, very important to the Orcs, but it's also very, very important to the Imperium. And now it's very, very important to Chaos, because if Chaos can take this planet, just like I mentioned, it opens the gate potentially to invade the Segmentum Solar and then all the way towards Terra itself. So what's happening now is that Chaos is kind of being put to the forefront of being this new threat. It does mention that the Orc War is still there, like it's not completely gone away. It's actually mentioned in this bit of text, apparently, that the Orc War has been raging on for years. It's just the emergence of this brand new warp rift over the northern parts of Armageddon. Now, it goes on to mention that a lot of people don't understand what this is, but this goes back to more ancient times, and for me and you, we know what that means. That is the first war of Armageddon. This new rift that's opened in the northern bits goes all the way back to that war, opening the floodgates for a massive demonic chaos space marine invasion. Now, the big thing in this, and I think this is setting up for an epic story somewhere down the line. Hopefully they do. If Games Workshop don't do this, it's just a loss on their part, to be fair with you. So in this text, apparently it confirms that the rift itself is called the Red Angel's Gate. It says that those who know what this means know it harkens back to a darker time, which again, me and you know, is the first War of Armageddon. The Red Angel is the nickname for Angron. So potentially what you have now on this planet is this rift called the Red Angel's Gate, which is pouring with demons, chaos space marines, all the nasties that you can think of, and it sets it up for potentially Angron returning on this planet. I know we've mentioned this so many times on the channel, since Angron was banished on Armageddon, does that mean he has to be revived on Armageddon? We know back in 8th edition, this is the old lore in 8th edition, which they kind of changed because they jumped forward 114 years after the Indomitus Crusade, that there was an attempt to summon Angron back on Armageddon. But the Salamander chapter actually stopped that. So I'm wondering now if they're retconning that, or it's already been retconned technically because we are back in time, and the summoning for Angron is actually going to happen, and that's where he's going to be brought back, and we're going to see a bunch of lore in the World Eater Codex, World Eaters potentially on Armageddon. You can have so many different ideas now going on, story-wise, going forward on Armageddon. You can have World Eaters versus Black Templars. You know, Chaplain Groundus returns there. I know we've spoken about Gazskull and Angron throwing down because maybe Angron returns on the planet, he kills Yarrick. Gazskull hears about this, launches the biggest war there's ever been just to get revenge on his favourite Uma. You know, the potential for the storylines is at a maximum. Do I think Games Workshop will jump on them? Who the hell bloody knows? Now, going away from that theory craft for a second, let's just actually go back to like the proper lore, which is apparently mentioned again in this new Astra Militarum / Imperial Guard Codex. So we actually go back to a new Hive now. We don't return to Hell's Reach or anything like that. We go to Hive Foradis. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. And the commander of that Hive is Colonel Burkant. And he's basically trying to hold the tide against this upcoming threat of chaos. They're launching everything at him. You know, Marines, demons, Titans are involved. Just all the nasties, like I keep saying, that you can mention are being thrown at this Hive city. They have this epic battle, you know, the guns, the artillery, the tanks, the las guns, pew-pewing, boom-boom, everything is just devastating. You know, it's an epic bloody war. But of course, Chaos basically have this unlimited supply because of the rift, and they're slowly getting pushed back into the city. They're fighting block by block, foot by foot, inch by inch, bayonet, you know, hands, everything like that. It's an epic last stand by the Guard in this city. Finally, the Chaos are about to overrun it, and the Colonel gives like a final order to basically blow up the city. And like once Chaos are inside of it, like he presses the button, it just begins to like erupt. Titans apparently die and stuff like that. You know, hundreds of Chaos Space Marines die, and the cultists, absolutely devastated. But ultimately, it is a victory for Chaos. Now, I have no idea if Games Workshop are going to progress this storyline, if they're going to keep it on. Maybe this is it. It's just going to be a stagnant, everyone's fighting on that planet type of situation, which they normally do. For me, I've always said that Armageddon is probably one of the greatest battlefields out there. Like, leave your Vigilus at home, leave your Cadia, well, in pieces at this moment. Armageddon takes it all. I've always been a fan of orcs. I've always been a fan of orcs fighting the Imperium when it comes to Space Marines. The brutality of the orcs is just amazing. I love it so much. Now you're having Chaos slung in there. Yes, as I mentioned, it didn't really mention that much orcs in this new Warzone Armageddon blurb of text, but it doesn't mean that the orcs are not there. The orcs are definitely still there. You can't really get rid of orcs unless, a Tyranid take over the planet and then just eat all the biomass and stuff like that. Orcs are always going to be a nuisance, even though you think you've killed them. So I do think that the orcs still are going to have a massive presence. They're still going to be the thorn in the side of the Imperium and the Chaos forces on Armageddon. I really, 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 really do hope that Gazskull returns back to Armageddon and unleashes another war. If you haven't been following Gazskull, he basically now has the biggest fleet, the biggest ships, the biggest army in the galaxy, and he's just ready to unleash it all. And I really, really hope he comes back to Armageddon and does that. I would love to see a absolute three-way war between the Imperium, Chaos, and the Orcs, and maybe have a final battle where maybe Angron is kicked off the planet and Gazskull reigns. Gazskull wins the planet of Armageddon back. That would be beautiful. The Orcs reclaim Olenor, they get back their planet, and the Orc Empire starts to basically restart again. I'd love that. I really, really would love that. It'd put a massive, massive spoon into the mix and really stir the things up in the lore, and then potentially you can say, okay, that's why another Primarch comes back, that's why this comes back, that's why Dante turns into a Primaris Marine, Azrael turns into a Primaris Marine. You can have all these offshoots then of different stories, but again, that's just me going down the theory hole at this moment in time. I would love to get your thoughts and feedback on this. What do you think about the Red Angel's Gate? Do you think that is now a big lore talking point, a big lore point for going forward. Like, why call it? Well, we of course we know why it's called the Red Angel's Gate, because he was banished on that planet. But you know, to bring it back up in this new text, is that now the foundations of potentially bringing Angron back on Armageddon? We know Angron's coming back. That is a fact. Angron is coming back. Next year is the year for the World Eaters, right at the start of the year. But how is he going to come back into the story? Mortarion came back in a certain way. Magnus came back in a certain way. How the hell is Angron coming back? Hopefully it is an Armageddon, and we're about to see an absolute awesome lore narrative adapted for that storyline. Anyway, that is enough waffling from me. As always, thank you for coming. Thank you for watching. If you've got any thoughts, feedback, anything like that, let me know down in the comment section, and we've got a nice little talk down there, as we always do. See you now. Have a great day, and bye-bye.